We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And after taking some unexpected time away from our replay series, we are returning back to replaying the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, resuming our replay with episode 2. And we are starting to really get into the meat and potatoes of the actual plot and discussions of the show now that we had the setup in episode 1. So now that we're there and there's a lot to talk about, Katie, I'm going to hand it over to you to start us off.
Honestly, I know I kind of ripped the first episode a new one, not gonna lie, but the second episode proves exactly why I did.
It's so
if
good.
I'm being honest. Yeah, it's so good. And like, if the first episode I was sitting there going, oh dear God, can this be over? This episode I was like, oh my gosh, there's more. And like, that is genuinely how I felt watching it. I was like, holy crap, there's still 20 minutes left in this and so much has happened. And not in a way that I'm like, oh God, there's 20 minutes left, but like, yay. Like what else? Like there was so much that was happening that I was like, I don't remember this all being in the second episode of this show. And I think to your point, this is really starting to get into it. And it's a lot of it's because we put Bucky and Sam together finally on the screen. And I think it completely changed the dynamic of the entire show.
I totally agree. I mean, the fact that as soon as those two are together, things start to really move forward. And look, I know, you were talking a lot about episode 1 being really slow, but I think that episode 2 wouldn't be as good if you didn't have to kind of get through all of the setup in episode 1, because I think looking back at it, episode 1 does such a good job of explaining, okay, here's the main conflict. You're starting to understand who the Flag Smashers are. You understand where Bucky and Sam are coming from, why they're kind of both struggling in different ways with different things. You even introduce the new Captain America. And then immediately when you get into episode 2, boom, you start right away. You get Bucky and Sam together. You get to see, Walker really being Captain America. And we'll get into that, I'm sure, as well. But all of that wouldn't be possible, to your point, to pack into episode 2 if we didn't have such a good episode 1 that even though the pacing might be slow, it laid the foundation really, really well for this episode to bounce off of it or build off of it and really start to take us into the primary plot and the primary themes and discussions that the show is trying to get to.
I mean, I hear you. I don't necessarily disagree. I do still feel like, because here's how I guess I'm starting to look at it is, as an MCU show that has 6 episodes, I get it. And we kind of give it some leeway because I think it's an MCU show that has 6 episodes. But if I were to be like watching this show, trying to get into it, let's say that there's 7 seasons. The way they set this up, unfortunately to me, I still think the first episode, like I would have turned it off. I don't think I would have had the interest in continuing to watch it. So I think from like that perspective, I still am pretty bothered by how that works. I think you could have mixed and mingled a little bit, because here's the thing. A lot of shows do that. A lot of shows mix and mingle the groundwork storytelling within the first few episodes, and then we're still putting things together at the beginning of episode 1 for you to start to kind of be like, okay, something's going on versus, episode 1 was a little bit of a struggle, I think, in this case. But like I said, I think the second episode really does start to turn it. I should say, I think it does start to turn it around. And these two characters on the screen together honestly makes me, I don't know how to say this without just being like, it makes me really sit there and be like, at least, especially in my perspective. And okay, that guys, I'm a Bucky apologist always. I don't necessarily say that this is correct, but it's my point of view. And again, I love Bucky. But I guess maybe it's better because, to be fair, Bucky isn't still another team up movie. He is still supported by an additional cast, but like in the Thunderbolts. I struggled with Sam because he was by himself, I think. And I think these two characters' strengths are not just playing off each other, although that is what entirely makes this show worthwhile, but I think unfortunately they aren't inherently standalone characters. The way they're written, I should say.
Interesting. I hear what you're saying. I do. I wanna kind of reframe though a little bit because I think we've never actually seen either one of them stand on their own, right? Like I know you mentioned Sam, but if you really think about Sam's movie, he obviously had his new Falcon with him, right? Even the fact that the film was so busy from a villain perspective, from a storyline perspective, he wasn't even the main character in his own movie.
Yes, but it's very different to me than the Thunderbolts. Like it was not the same.
It totally is, but I guess what I'm saying is I still don't feel like we have seen either one of these characters as the lead character in a property without a real supporting cast like that is of pretty much equal billing regardless of whether or not they're supposed to be. So I would love to actually see each of these characters headlining their own property truly. Especially I'm looking at Sam because Bucky really he's never been even marketed that way. He's
Yeah.
always, to your point, either been the sidekick, the villain, or in a team up. Sam's movie marketed him as the primary character, but he was very much not. So I hesitate to agree with your statement because I just don't feel like we've seen either one of these characters effectively used as the main character in a property, and I would still want to see them actually be written with that purpose because I don't think that has been executed well at all.
That's fair. I guess I still kind of consider Captain America 4 still Sam's movie enough. I do agree that like obviously it's a busy movie and they it's not really Captain America's movie, but I think I do struggle because when I watched this I was like, this is impeccable. Give me 17 years of this. I could watch these two interact. And now a lot of it comes down to the chemistry between Anthony and Sebastian.
Yeah.
They're very close friends off set. I mean, they have been for years. So I think there's a lot of that aspect as well. They can play off each other. I mean, like there's that one scene when he's saying the big three scene.
Oh
And
my god, it's
it's
so
not
funny.
that part more than I don't know if it's before or after, but like, oh no, it's like right after when he's like, I just made that up on the spot. And I like sat there for a second. I was like, was that did he just like improv that? And then he like admitted to improving it, but it worked. So they kept it in. Like I was like, wait a second, that like worked.
Yeah.
But like it's stuff like that where you could almost be like, these two improv these scenes together because it's just the two of them interacting just in characters. Like even the therapy scene. So like
Oh my god, so good.
it's so good. And I think like I just struggle so much then seeing them because I again, Sebastian goes on to have Bucky with a team that he once again can interact with like that. And I just think when you see Sam more inherently on his own than in comparison to where Bucky goes, I think he really struggles as a character. I think the strength here is for these two to either be in a team up or just be together. Because I think again, the show completely changed not like emotion, but like just tone almost. Even though we're dealing with a very serious thing, and there's a lot of serious aspects that have come in, especially in this episode. But like the tone just very much shifts when the two of them are interacting with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that they have a very special chemistry. You know, even within all of the MCU, they're two of the actors or characters, both really, that just go so well together. I just think overall, Sam and this isn't Mackie's fault, but like Sam has not been written well a lot of the time, unfortunately, in his most recent stuff. Like he's written really well in this show. I shouldn't even say recently. He's not written well in his movie at all. He's a secondary character in his own movie. He is, not given, I think, the depth that we see in this show, especially. I mean, we talked about last episode how we spend so much time trying to give Sam this backstory because he really wasn't a character that we'd explored that with before. And so now we have that backstory and we see, the weight of this decision that he's made and now the consequences of having a new Captain America and how that's weighing on him. And we'll see more of that conversation throughout the rest of the show. And as Sam begins to gain confidence in Steve's decision and understand why Steve chose him and all those things. And then I just feel like we lose some of the depth to the character when he actually is Captain America, and that's a writing thing.
Yeah,
And I think
definitely.
that's really unfortunate, because I think Mackie shows, especially in this property, what a fantastic actor he is and how much he is able to give to the character, and then they wrote him really two-dimensionally in that film, and it's a bummer.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I agree to everything you said in the sense of this show really shows the range he can give and the story you can tell with him. And I mean, let's just kind of get a little further into it. At the end of episode 1, we're introduced to John Walker.
Yeah.
And at the very beginning of this episode, we really kind of actually meet John Walker. And now I have to say, he fooled me in the first half. And I was
Yeah.
like, maybe it's the Thunderbolts part of me that's like giving him the benefit of the doubt. By the end, I was like, oh no, I remember why I didn't like you. I
Yeah.
remember why this was the way it was. But, at the beginning when we're seeing him talk to his wife, we're seeing him do the whole TV spot thing at his high school and like how he's talking about like just the thing, like actually he doesn't even talk about the accomplishments he has. He's like very humble about it. And
Yeah.
then like they're saying like, oh no, like these are all the amazing things you've done. Like this is how you've earned this, like all this. And I actually at first, again, like I feel like I was being fooled, bamboozled, if you will, because I was like, I thought I really didn't like you in this show. And I know what's to come, but I was like, I don't remember liking you at all.
Yeah.
So I was really thrown off. And again, I thought it was the thunderboltification of it all. Cause like I was like, maybe I'm just like a fan now. I don't know.
Yeah.
That didn't last
Right.
at all.
Right.
Like, but like I'm not gonna lie, like that by the end of that episode, I was like, that's your personality.
Yeah.
There's the John Walker. Yep, that's who I expected to see. And I think it's very interesting because he does at first play up that merit of like filling the shoes of Steve and trying to like live up to that legacy and things like that. And like I think it does humanize him when he's talking about like how strange this is and things like that. And even when he's talking about like I'd rather be doing I'd rather be out on the mission and doing it like instead of doing all the like shaking hands and stuff, which is
Yeah.
a big thing that Steve went through as well. So I think the parallel really does initially paint him so differently. And then it's so interesting how throughout the episode you can literally see the idea of him being Captain America and the doors it opens completely shift his perspective.
Yeah. I mean, you're so right. And that was definitely something I wanted to bring up in this episode as well, because I actually ended up watching this episode twice. Don't ask. It was just, it is what it is. But both times I was like, they did a really good job of, to your point, humanizing him. And even though, like, if you have the comic background, like, you know who John Walker is, you know kind of what that story is, but you're like, this version of John Walker, he's humble. You can tell that he just wants to do a good job. He's feeling the weight of, the expectations, but he's feeling that weight because he wants to meet or exceed them. And this is a guy who's clearly worked really hard his entire career. Like, he has excelled and he has done that because he has this kind of, sense of purpose. And that comes through so clearly. And you get this feeling that this is a good guy, right? You're like, oh, the way he talks about Steve and what Steve stood for, and even when he makes some comment about how I'm not like Banner or Stark, I don't have the tech or the super strength, but I have what Captain America had, which is guts. And Captain America just has to be the guy who does the thing even when it's hard. And you're like, wow, that actually is a lot of what Captain America is. Like, he gets it, right? And you have this moment where you're like, all right, cool. This guy he understands Steve and he understands the legacy, and
Yes.
he wants to, yes, he'll put his own spin on it, but he wants to keep that intact. Even when you're in, I want to say it was Munich, when they had the car fight that
Yes.
on the trucks,
Yeah.
and I knew it was Germany, but I could not remember the city, but
I'm
I'm glad I
pretty sure
did.
it's Munich. If not, it's like they said they were near Munich or something like that.
That's what I thought. So even then, when they have that interaction in the car, they're all sitting there. He's still like, look, I'm not trying to be Steve Rogers. I'm trying to be the best Captain America I can be. And
100%.
you're like, all right, this guy's coming at this with good intentions. And you feel that, and you feel there's a genuine goodness there or
Well, and
intention to do
honestly,
good.
he had me giggling during the truck fight when
Yeah,
him
he
and
was
like,
funny.
oh, what's it? I know it's Battlestar. I'm forgetting his name right
I know
now.
his last name is Hoskins.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say Hoskins, but then I was like, am I making that up? Like,
No.
um, but like the way they'll be like thumbs up to each other that like it's going well, and I was like, wait, I kind of am loving this, and then obviously that's ruined in the car scene afterwards. But like, I literally was like, this is funny. Like
Yeah.
I'm enjoying these two together, and I'm enjoying John, which was like a jump scare for me.
I know. I know. Yeah, it was definitely like those first, and there are some things in the car scene where you see some differences between him and Steve. So like for example, when they are talking about the GRC and they're explaining what their role is to like enforce the GRC, and I want to say it's Sam who's like, "Oh, well, you're speaking like the people who have all the resources, because they're
Yes.
saying, well, our job is to defend all the resources and make sure it goes smoothly." And you think to yourself, okay, but Steve, if this was Steve, he'd be thinking critically, but is this the right thing to do, not just following orders? Which is a big difference between him and John, because Steve was a good man, not the perfect soldier. John is right now a good man, but he's more the perfect soldier, and you start to see those cracks.
Well, the other thing is, and that it's exactly where you're at, is the point that Steve went against everything he knew because he didn't believe it was right.
Right.
And not because Steve's like, oh, I don't like that. No, he sat there, and I mean, with Shield, he did it. He did
Hmm.
it in Civil War, going against the Sokovia Accords and his own team because of it, and inherently the government, which
Yeah.
Sam even brings up. Like the last time this all happened, like we went on the run for 2 years,
Yeah.
and the thing is that's the big difference. Is this is Captain America, owned by the government,
Yep.
told what to do by the government. And that's exactly what you're saying too, with like, he is the perfect soldier. He's listening, he takes his orders, and he goes and does what he has to do.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what Steve ended up fighting against, and
Yep.
why he ended up on the run. And, obviously he took on for a little while the title of Nomad
Yep.
and all of that, because again, he not only did it the first time with Hydra and Shield and going in and fleshing out everybody who was, actually Hydra and all of that, but especially considering Shield was built by the woman he ends up, whatever, I don't agree, but going back into marrying, like, he's like, listen, slander wherever it's available, but like, he literally dismantles Shield for the sake of understanding that like Hydra's growing within it. And yes, there are good soldiers, but unfortunately there are plenty that are not.
Yeah.
And then again, the government situation and all that. This is a man who refused to be owned by the government. John Walker is a man completely content being owned by the government. He
Yep.
finds it one of the most highest honors really for him to
Yeah.
sit there and be the government's number one agent, essentially.
100%. And he even says something to that effect, I think, when he's talking to the therapist. And she's like, under whose authority? And he says, mine.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you start to see that's the moment, like it's the little comment in the car about, what their job is. Because I think he does say at one point in the episode, and I forget exactly what scene he says it in, but he says, I am the government. I am the United States government. And I was like, all right, John Walker. And it's those moments, it's what he says to the therapist about it's under my authority, it's when he threatens them subtly at the end of the episode, that you start to see, to what you had, kind of hinted at earlier throughout this episode, he's really seeing, I see what kind of power Captain America gets me,
Yep.
what this title means for me. I can slash through all kinds of red tape that, and he still is bound by certain things, and that's Sam's point, but he can slash through a lot of red tape that he couldn't as a regular, soldier who didn't have the title of Captain America. And that really starts to go to his head.
Yeah.
He starts to have this cocky swagger, and that's where he becomes insufferable.
Yes.
And then he just becomes downright dangerous.
Yes. And that's exactly where, I mean, like, how quickly in this episode that shifts.
Yes.
It really goes to his head so quickly. And you know what, though? Kudos to Wyatt, because he does, and we've always said this. I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna tell some people off, but to the people who went after him as an actor because John is insufferable, he did his job so well.
Yeah, if anything, it's a testament.
Yeah, like, I have nothing against Wyatt Russell at all.
No.
At all. And it's because he has made me hate John Walker, and then he came back in the Thunderbolts and somehow made me like the guy. Like,
yeah.
That is some incredible acting as far as I'm concerned,
I
because
agree.
it's so easy to make a character people love.
Yep.
Or even a character people misunderstand. That's much easier than making a character that not only people cannot stand, but then managing to change that perception in your next appearance.
Yeah.
Like, I genuinely, that is impressive. And he does it in one episode.
Yeah.
I mean, when he's introduced, like I said, even my own delusional mind was sitting there like,
this guy's not so bad.
yeah, I was like, I don't really understand why I didn't like him that much. Like, I remember, again, guys, I know episode 4. I know what happens. But like, I was like, I just don't understand. And he just so quickly turns in one episode to prove exactly why we don't like John Walker. And it is genuinely amazing acting, and really puts John Walker on the map in one episode as well. It makes him a very prominent aspect of the story, and low-key a foe for Bucky and Sam. Now, that's not to say, obviously, I know Sam and Bucky both have their feelings, and a lot of it is about the shield ending up with him. I don't think they give John a fair shot.
I agree.
I don't think they ever do.
I agree.
And now Bucky, I understand. Bucky, I do understand. That's a man who, it's literally his best friend from childhood, who was the one and only Captain America. And then he also feels, obviously, we find out in the therapy session, a lot of those feelings then come from Sam giving up the shield and the deeper feelings he has behind all of that. So I think also Bucky's just a grumpy old man. So like, there's a lot going against him. Like, we understand Bucky's reaction, right, guys? Like, I understand Sam's feelings, but I don't think either of them allow John actually the opportunity to try. And it bothers me a little bit because they're both also veterans.
Yeah.
And this is a highly decorated soldier. And so like that kind of bothers me a little bit as well. Like, I do feel like they're disrespecting the work he has put in. And he even says, like, I put in the work.
Yeah.
Like, I did this crap. Like, I've earned a lot of stuff. Like, I've been a good soldier. And I do feel a little frustration with that, because I do think, I know it's the plot and I know whatever, but I do think things could have gone a little differently had they given him a fair shot of actually working with him or understanding him. And it's also not like he didn't just like show up one day and say, I want to be Captain America. Like, the government picked him.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I actually found myself having a similar thought when I was watching the episode, because they write him off immediately, right? Like,
Yeah.
they actually treat him, and I think you're gonna chuckle. They kind of treat him like a nepo baby. They're like, "What did you do to earn this?" And
No, literally.
but then they're out here, and like, I think that's so important from that first couple of scenes where you're introing John, where the anchor from Good Morning America is saying, "Oh, you have X amount of medals, and you've done this, and you've tested off the charts," and they show him testing with the shield, and it's like, they didn't just pick some random guy because he knew someone or he had some dirt on somebody or whatever it is. This guy, to what you were saying, did the work, tested off the charts. Like, he is one of the best soldiers in the US Army, and they felt was the best candidate. He's a decorated, extremely accomplished soldier who has led teams, and that's so much of what Captain America has to do as part of his responsibilities. And so I think you're totally right. Like, for them to just write him off because he's not Steve Rogers, well, that's nobody's Steve Rogers. That's the point.
Yeah.
That was literally your speech in episode 1, Sam. Like, that's what you were saying. And I understand that, from Sam's perspective, he thought that shield was going to be in a museum forever because that is the symbol of what Steve Rogers stood for. But at the end of the day, you trusted people and they screwed you over, but John Walker didn't screw you over. He just
Exactly.
got promoted.
Exactly. And I hate defending John, guys. I
I
really
know.
do. I
It
do.
really, my mouth feels a little itchy.
Well, and it's like I feel like I'm going against my husband. Like I feel like it's one of those that I shouldn't even be like we don't talk about this. What is it like go with it in public, correct in private. Like I feel like that's what's happening. I'm like putting his business on blast. No, in all seriousness though, you're completely right. Like I really do think like at the end of the day, Bucky and Sam's feelings are completely valid. And
Yeah.
there are definitely obviously even for Sam, there are greater undertones that we will also be getting further into that, we saw throughout this episode. But I just struggle because I do think there is that aspect of like they just villainize essentially John for something he never really could control. It's
Yeah.
to your point, like I like how you said it. He essentially just got promoted. Like that's that.
Yeah. He didn't make the decision.
Well, like I said, I don't like. Do you have to apply? Like, or did they just grab a couple that they were like, you guys could, and then test them and see how they do, and like everything else. Like, even if he applied, like it wasn't his idea to bring Captain America back. Like, I,
Yeah.
I totally get the feelings that are being felt, but I do think it was unfair, unfortunately, to John, and so I think that starts the downward spiral a little bit to it.
Well, yeah, because, I think so much is said and unsaid in that car scene because he's saying, like, even to Bucky, he makes a comment about how he knows how this is, like, personal to him or something like that. And then when Bucky leaves, he looks at Sam and he's like, well, you're Captain America's wingman. Like, he knows what these guys, the emotions that they have around the shield. He tries to acknowledge that. My God, I'm really struggling with this whole like defending John Walker. Like
I know.
this is hard for me.
I know. Don't worry, guys. By episode 4, we will be ripping him a new one.
Yeah. I mean, right now I can be objective. Later on when he sullies the shield, man, like there's just no going back.
Correct.
But I will say, like, in this episode, he is, at least at the beginning, he's coming at this with good intentions. He's recognizing what this means for them. But at the same time, he's kind of like, I earned, this was also like an earned promotion. Like, again, like, he wasn't just some random soldier. He was someone who was highly decorated, highly valued, highly respected. And they chose him to do this.
Yeah.
He didn't, to your point, decide, I say we bring back Captain America. No, he was probably just following orders to be like, hey, you should try out for this. They think you could be a candidate, and then he won.
Yeah.
Based on merit. Based on merit.
Yeah. I completely agree. And like I said, I hate going against my man, but I get it, but it's
Well, and they reject him outright from the beginning, which I think is like that's where I was trying to go with the whole like he knew what they meant, what the shield means to them. For the two people closest to the man who held the shield to reject him that summarily without even really hearing him out, I mean, that had to be a huge, huge blow to his confidence. It had to feel like if you think about it, he has the acceptance of the military, of course, who picked him. Seems like widely America as a populace is embracing him and the idea of us having a living Captain America again. But those people, not to say the American people don't matter, but the people closest to the man who held the shield, the man who that shield represents, for them to reject him like that is a whole different level.
Yeah. It's the closest that he can get to Steve Rogers' blessing, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it is hard because then on the flip side of it, this whole show is the struggle for Sam to take on the mantle.
Yeah.
And I think, this goes right into that conversation of Sam did what he thought was best. Obviously, Bucky seeks him out solely because he's like, what is wrong with you? Why would you give that up? Steve gave you that shield for a reason. You were supposed to be deserving. And obviously, again, it goes into the undercurrent of if you aren't deserving of this, I'm not deserving of everything that's good happening to me and being pardoned and everything else and
Right.
turning my life around. And I'm not a good person because Steve believes that you should be Captain America, that you were the embodiment of that shield. And I think, this second episode is honestly a punch in the face,
Yeah.
which is really funny because you're laughing through half of it, but then we just get into such serious concepts so quickly. And that is, those, or I should say, those are two big ones is Sam struggling with this concept of the shield and what that looks like, and America being accepting of him
Yep.
as Captain America. That is the entirety of the show. Especially then you have your perfect blonde-haired, blue-eyed John Walker walking
Yep.
around now as the perfect, embodiment of of the next Steve Rogers, who was also your blonde-haired, blue-eyed,
Yep.
good old American boy from Brooklyn. And so I think that is such an interesting thing that we start to really see in tandem of understanding Bucky's struggle of fitting into this world and leaving his past behind, and just like really what he does now moving forward through his mental health, struggles and path through that, and just all of that. And the second episode just blows that all open.
Yeah, it really sets, it sets the foundation beyond what we saw in episode 1 for these conversations that we're going to have that get deeper, that get, more explicit as time goes on, especially as we think about, Sam's struggles with the shield, especially, and the things that he goes through. I mean, obviously, to your point, there are things that kind of go unsaid in this episode as to why he gave up the shield. And then we get to, a really, really big reveal in this episode, which is, of course, the existence of Isaiah Bradley, which is huge because up until this point, we think of super soldiers and we think of Captain America, we have Bucky, we have, the Hydra soldiers that were killed in Civil War, and we have, we don't even have Red Guardian yet at this point. So there are really quite few super soldiers that we think of, right? Or I should say that we know of. And then we get to the existence of Isaiah. And that is so, Sam's reaction, I think, is so visceral because it's like, wait a minute. We had another Steve Rogers. I mean, in terms of a functioning super soldier, and yet instead of being lauded and being held up as this symbol of America, he was thrown in jail. And that is obviously a metaphor for so much in terms of the American way of life, our justice system, all of those pieces, even down to the scene right after meeting Isaiah when
Yes.
they're on the street. And it's immediately assumed that Sam is bothering Bucky, that Sam is the disturbance, only to flip that on its head and find that Bucky is the one who actually needs to be arrested, right? And the poignant part of that scene as well is as soon as Bucky says, "Do you know who this is?" It's like Sam is exempt from all of those assumptions that are being made about him simply because he happens to be an Avenger. But had he not been recognized, he would be dealing with the exact same thing that many people in the Black community deal with every single day. And so you put those two scenes together and you immediately understand what this show is trying to get across about America, but then also starting to lay the foundation of what Sam has left unsaid about why he did not pick up that shield.
Yeah, and I think even just an important point to make there is it takes Bucky saying it. Because as you're watching this scene, and it really is maybe a minute long scene at most, it plays into the stereotypes that unfortunately in America, especially, that the Black community faces.
Yeah.
And we see it. I mean, as soon as the scene starts, you're already, and the police officer's asking Sam, or I'm sorry, ask Bucky directly, is there a problem? And Sam's like, no, dude, like we're fine. And it's the eyes. Like you could see the police officers looking at Bucky,
Yeah.
the white guy,
Yeah.
to give him the answer. And even when Bucky is saying everything's fine, he's telling Sam, calm down, man, even though they're answering in the exact same tone with each other.
Yep.
And it unfortunately takes Bucky saying, do you know who this guy is?
Yep.
For them to be like, oh man, this is an Avenger. And to your point, that is the thing that set him apart in that moment.
Yep.
That is the only thing that allowed those police officers to take a step back. And he even said, oh, I didn't recognize you without your goggles or whatever. And it's like, you were profiling him, dude.
Yeah, like he wasn't a human being
Yeah.
that you were seeing until he was an Avenger, and then he was a human being.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you just saw him as, unfortunately, in your eyes, another example of that stereotype that unfortunately exists in America.
Yeah.
And so it is it is a very powerful, powerful scene, especially, like I said, when you get off the heels of Isaiah Bradley, who spent 30 years in prison for doing the exact same thing that Steve Rogers did, exactly the same. I think you find that out later
Yeah.
about more of Isaiah's story. But he did exactly what Steve did, got thrown in jail, got tested. They never did that to Steve.
No.
They never did that to Steve. And then he was completely erased from the history books. A complete erasure of everything that he did. He's an American hero, but do you know the name Isaiah Bradley before he is brought into the light later into this in this show? And Sam obviously does what he can to help with his reputation and things, as we see in his movie. And that's not at all what Steve's experience was, right? Steve was Mr. Mythical Captain America. You had another one who is completely erased from all of the records of history because he's a black man.
Yeah. I truly have to say this show, it's one of the best shows Marvel has ever put out because Marvel does their best when they take on hard topics.
Yes.
And topics that unfortunately we face as a nation across the board. I mean, I'm thinking even about Thunderbolts.
Yep.
And the mental health perspective. I mean, they're not things that, and I'm going to be honest, like, this is what Marvel's made up of. And if you pick up a comic, these are not stories that the MCU as a Disney property is putting together. These are stories that are reality in things that Stan Lee and some of the other authors who really, or like comic writers who started these. I mean, we talked a lot about this with the X-Men.
Yep.
And what they were meant to represent.
Yep.
And how we all eat up all the X-Men stuff. And then there's still somehow a group of people who just like don't understand it for some reason. And I'm like, hey guys, you are the people that hate the mutants.
Yeah.
Like, you're the problem. And I do have to say, I don't love when Marvel shies away from this stuff because I don't think they put out their best work when they decide to just avoid tough topics, if you will. And also, I fully believe everybody has should be represented in Marvel, and they
Yeah.
are. Look at the comics; they are.
Yep.
So these stories are being told rightfully, not just from the source material, but to adapt. I mean, everybody wants to praise Daredevil, Born Again, for the topics at hand. I hate to break it to y'all, but some of y'all support Kingpin in that. If you really want to break it down, so
Yeah.
like, I really love when Marvel goes into these hard topics because, again, especially with the actors, it shows the range that these are, some of them, really A-list actors that
Yeah.
unfortunately Chris Hemsworth has gotten brutally like character assassinated over time. But this is a great actor, and he's been in things that he's very good in. Same with Chris Evans. Like, Mackie shows his range in this series.
Yes.
And they allow him to tell this story properly for this character.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think when you are adapting comic material and you take away the actual messages that the comic material was trying to portray, messages of acceptance, love, just general respect for people, all of those are things that from the earliest folks at Marvel to now, they have been trying to convey through these characters and through their challenges. And you're right, the properties that have most potently tapped into those themes are the ones that have done the best, right? Are
Yeah.
the ones that tell the most meaningful stories.
I mean, we just finished talking about WandaVision.
Yeah.
And that told so much about grief and her mental health.
Yep.
And just, I mean, it tackled hard subjects.
It totally did. And I think that's why I mean, maybe we just have a soft spot for being able to analyze things that are at a deeper level. But I think those are more interesting then, to understand, what is this a metaphor for? What is this trying to tell us about ourselves, right? Like, that's what art is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a reflection of the world that we live in, whether that's a reflection of the world that we hope we'll see someday, a reflection of, hey, if we continue on this, particular path, this is the dystopia we're going to live in someday, this is your warning, or this is the world we're living in now, add a few enhanced individuals and some crazy other things, but this is a metaphor for the world we're living in. And that scene that we were just talking about with Sam and Bucky on the street, that doesn't need any, more explanation in terms of, that's not a metaphor. That is exactly a representation of what goes on American streets every single day. That is a true one-for-one representation of American life. And if it makes people uncomfortable, that's because we all deep down know that that way of life is wrong and it needs to change. That's what art's supposed to do as well. Make you uncomfortable and make you realize things. And I think this show stands among some of the giants in the things that Marvel has put out that make you think and make you want to do better and understand the world and what it could be and the possibilities and the hope for a better world than the one that we're living in now.
100%. And it's best told when they don't shy away from it. And this
Agreed.
episode, again, as I said very early in our episode here, they really balance it because like then the next scene you're laughing.
Yeah.
And so it can catch you almost off guard because it happens and then you're like, "Oh, therapy session."
Yeah.
But funny therapy session and I'm having a laugh. Like it very quickly does turn that page, and but it's well done because it keeps you thinking about it. And again, this whole show is the story of Sam and why he doesn't take that shield initially and what he feels like it means when he finally does.
Yeah.
And I think, again, when Marvel doesn't shy away from this stuff, they do an impeccable job at telling the story. And it is very powerful. And that, as you also said, it is why this show is still one of the, I mean, trust me, guys, I understand we've also had some crappy shows,
Yeah.
but like, it is why this show as a whole is talked about quite highly across the board. And there's a lot of parts to it, but that's one of them. And that's a big part of it.
Yeah, for sure. It's a meaningful show outside of just, furthering these characters and their storylines and, setting them up for the next property. It's also trying to get you to think. It's trying to get you to feel something beyond just the MCU. There's no gentle way to pivot out of that particular conversation. It's definitely one that's going to continue as the show goes on. As we mentioned, the show doesn't shy away from themes about race and equality or inequality, and it's going to be a continuous thread that we will keep discussing and analyzing throughout the rest of the series. But I do just want to, before we wrap up the show, I want to talk about one thing that's kind of popped up. I believe it also popped up in episode 1. We didn't talk about it, but it really starts to gain traction now in episode 2 and will continue to be more important as we move forward in the series. And that's the concept of the power broker.
Yeah.
Because we know who she is. But up until this point in the series, it's just this kind of like nebulous, like the power broker is angry, the power broker's coming at us. And this is if you're, a member of the Flag Smashers. But we don't really know yet who that is. But I just wanted to point out that we're starting to get more and more hints that they're starting to get more aggressively attacked by the power broker because all we know at this point is they've stolen something from her. And I say her because, again, hi Sharon, but Sharon's also name dropped in this episode as well, so that's not a coincidence. I just had to point that out because that's something that I believe they actually go to her in episode 3. It's when they meet, after they meet with Zemo, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So Sharon's going to make her appearance soon.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we also get a lot more about the Flag Smashers because
Yeah.
this is the first episode we see Carly.
Correct.
And we learn that she is the leader. Obviously, in the first episode, we see that the guy who helps. Well, I think there were a couple of them, but we do see the one who actually like takes the money when they rob the bank. And I think there is the assumption he's the leader and everything.
Yep.
I'm actually not sure they've blatantly said she is the leader quite yet, or if that's me filling it in from knowing that. Because I'm not remembering for some reason if that was established.
They all kind of
fully.
look to her, like in
Yeah.
the scenes where you're seeing the Flag Smashers, and she's the one kind of giving the orders. So I don't know if it's like, to your point, explicitly stated, but it's definitely like heavily implied that she's the one in charge.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting because then we do see her getting the text.
Yep.
That's like, you stole something that was mine. And then, yes, we named up the power broker. We have one of the Flag Smashers soldiers pretty much sacrifice himself for the rest of them to get away
Yep.
with the power broker's army of men. And I think it is interesting because, like you said, hey Sharon, what's good? Because like we know it's her. We in the show we don't, but we do, having watched it already. And it is interesting because it does bring that other dynamic that we didn't yet have. We were definitely already setting up to have like the main foes obviously be the Flag Smashers and all of that. But when you bring John in, we kind of, that's antagonistic in its own way. Obviously, then now we have the power broker who's at play. we're about to break Zemo out of jail. So that's going to be, he's his own. I mean, he's Zemo. He's his own thing.
He's horrible, but he's kind of, well, in this show at least, the dancing is a vibe.
In this show, he redeems himself in his own way.
Yeah.
In like a hilarious way. The scene, I cannot wait. I mean, for as a Bucky fan, it has its own complications, but the scene of them at the club when he's just like fist pumping, I use that gif regularly, like to this day.
I know. Iconic.
I do enjoy him as a character, and I'm glad they brought him back. I wish we would see him again. I was disappointed he wasn't in Thunderbolts, although with the direction the Thunderbolts went, I understand why he wasn't in it, but
Yeah.
he is known notoriously for being a member of that group. But yeah, I'm excited for episode 3 because it also blasts some of those doors open, so we do get to talk a little bit more about the power broker. Obviously, that's a strand we left.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll talk about that maybe a little bit more in depth when we're wrapping up the show, but like just to put it out there, she's gone.
Emily Van Camp, where are you?
Yeah, we have not heard about her. She does not exist. I actually don't remember what happens to Zemo at the end of this either.
I don't either.
He's gone. We have not heard about him. So there, unfortunately, the continuity from the end of this show with some of these things that are these characters, I should say, that are being introduced just kind of disappear. But it is interesting because ironically, there are like 4 or 5 groups that kind of keep our eyes on that all have their own beef with each other in different ways. And yet it never felt busy in the show.
Yeah.
Which I can commend.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of crazy. If you've been listening to any of our recent Sister Scoop episodes or anything where we've ever spoken about Doomsday, that is our number one concern about Doomsday among so many. But to your point, as you're listing out all these different players, you've got Bucky and Sam out here who are just like thrust into this whole web where you have John Walker, who also was just kind of thrust into the web, but like they don't want to work with him, so they're kind of at odds now and they're like beefing. And then you have the Power Broker and the Flag Smashers, who are not fans of each other, but then are also not fans of the Bucky and Sam and Walker and Hoskins situation. So everybody just is kind of like beefing, and then there's a lot going on.
I fear we may need a diagram.
No, for sure. But then at the same time, like, it all kind of makes sense. Like, why, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is the reason why everybody has issues with one another all makes sense. So it doesn't feel like, why is this all of a sudden happening? It's like you see why there's some antagonism between the different groups and how each group kind of gets swept into the other people's problems. And then it just kind of becomes this whole, like, one giant clash sort of at the end.
Yeah. But again, it doesn't feel busy. As you kind of said, like we have our concerns about a movie coming out at the end of this year. And yet somehow like, this did what it had to do. So I mean, who knows? Who knows? But it is interesting. It's setting up for some fun things to come in episode 3. And I mean, obviously, this is like an almost hour-long episode. If not, also literally our podcast episode. I'm talking about episode 2, sorry. But we can't obviously cover every bit and piece of it, but truly, I mean, an enjoyable episode to watch. Like I was having fun watching this episode. And, Sebastian Stan on my television screen always just brings me the utmost joy. So that helped.
Yes, it is definitely an enjoyable episode. I also think, like episode 1, it does a lot of work to move the story. Well, okay, let me say this. As I said earlier in the episode 1 laid the foundation. Episode 2 really moves the story along in very meaningful ways on almost every storyline's front, which is pretty impressive for one episode to do. And so now, here we are. We're ready to go. Episode 3, we're going to start to bring in more players, but also get more information about certain players that have only been name dropped, aka the Power Broker. And then basically by the end of episode 3, all of the players, the major players of the episode, are going to be on the board and interacting with one another in one way or the other.
Yeah, it just makes me excited. I think they're like, this is where the momentum of the show really takes off, I think. I think this is really, I do feel like I remember us not really hating the ending, just to kind of go forward a little bit. I don't remember. I think we were pretty okay with the ending. I actually think we might have enjoyed it.
Yes, I think this was one that was like the opposite of some of the
we
others.
Didn't like the first.
Yeah, slow start, fantastic ending. I think we thought they nailed the ending.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I would still so far, I'm already seeing myself agreeing with that. But we will see because guys, remember WandaVision and we actually were like, all this time and I don't really have an issue with it.
Yeah, I mean, look, it'll be fun to see how we feel about it now coming back, looking back at it 5 years later. Gross.
Shut up.
It's
Stop. Honestly,
crazy.
I saw a post the other day that somebody was like, guys, COVID was 7 years ago. And I was like, and I'm out. I'm leaving.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Rolling away down the hill. We're gone.
Don't talk to me again. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, we're good. But yeah, so it'll be fun. I'm genuinely excited. I will say, finishing this episode, when I was done with it, I was like, but what if I just kept going? Like, I genuinely wanted
I
to like
also
keep
hit
watching.
next episode and I was like, wait, you cannot.
No, because then you will. I know myself. I will get confused and be like, what was episode 2 and what was episode 3?
Same.
Yeah. So all in all, to say, we are really getting into the real fun part of this show, the part that is really great to analyze, lots of stories going on, lots of themes really being explored deeply, and I honestly can't wait to keep continuing to talk about this because this has been really fun so far.
Yeah. I fully agree. I mean, again, I will never complain when Sebastian Stan is on my screen, if I'm being honest. Like that's never a complaint for me. But I do like this show and I think I mean we had guested on one of our friend of the pods other podcasts. I believe it was actually for one of his last episodes of his podcast. And I think he had us ranking like all of the projects I think of phases. It was something like that and I remember having the Falcon and Winter Soldier in my top 5 for pretty much every piece of content that's come out post Endgame.
It's holding up extremely well thus far.
Yeah, I was just saying so far, like obviously, like I said, I have my small problems with, episode 1, which is inherently just that, like, please move it along. Like I just want to get to where I know it's better and where there's like plot that's moving a little bit more, but that's it. Like otherwise this I know I remember the show being very, very good. And I so far I'm confident that it still continues to like I didn't lie. I want to prove that I didn't lie and just like remember differently.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think this covers kind of the main topics for episode 2. We'll be back, of course, next week with episode 3, which is super exciting. Please make sure that you're following us on your podcast platform of choice if you want to continue along as we move with our replay and then move into Wonder Man later this month, which will be super, super fun. You can also check out our website and our Buy Me a Coffee, both of which are linked in the show notes if you would like to peruse.
You guys can also give us a follow on all of our socials, which are also linked in the show notes down below. And next week, we will be back with the Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 3, which is very exciting. And as mentioned, Wonder Man is also coming around the corner for new content from Marvel and the first new piece of content in 2026, believe it or not. Oh, by the way, Happy New Year, y'all. I know it took to the end of the episode, but I forgot. So Happy New Year to everybody. We're hoping the best for 2026. Obviously, we'll be ending this year with Doomsday, which is a very exciting and stressful thing for us. But make sure you guys are here and sticking around. We've got great content all year. Marvel's got a lot of great content coming out. We're very excited for it all, and we're excited to do it with all of you guys. So we'll see you next week. As always, Marvel just blew your mind, so let's talk about it.